But the Canadian team is forming ahead of this World Cup as well. Jesse Marsch naming a 24-player roster, and it's coming into clear what this World Cup roster might look like for Canada. We've known the core for a little while, but this roster sees Moïse Bombito get back in the picture. Liam Miller comes back after almost a year out with an injury. He got back on the pitch with Hull City as well. But this roster is really starting to make it clear what a World Cup roster in 8 months' time could look like for this Canadian team, whether it's 23 players or 26 players. Jonathan Osorio back in the squad as well. But Brendan, your initial thoughts on this Canadian team that is going to take on Australia and Colombia in Montreal and New Jersey?
Yeah, I agree with your feeling there that this looks much more like the team that we'll see next summer as opposed to the team that we saw in the last window in September. Of course, you're missing two very important pieces that I think are almost automatic starters on the back line there in Alphonso Davies and Alistair Johnson, of course, and whether Alphonso Davies has played in a different position to allow Richie Larea at left back because he seemed unstoppable against Romania and Wales. That's something that Jesse Marsch is going to figure out over the next few months. And as we've discussed before, that draw, which I believe is set for December 5th, right? The World Cup draw. I really do think that that's going to impact Jesse Marsch and his coaching staff's approach to these group stage games. And I think that over the last year and the last 18 months that he's been in charge, something that he's been afforded, a luxury that, John Herdman didn't have in the lead up to 2022, is already knowing how high the floor was and then trying to gauge how big the ceiling is. Whereas John Herdman's team was just in the building. They didn't know where the floor or the ceiling was. They were just running around. And I think that we'll see, and we've seen already with the rise that they've had in the FIFA World Rankings, with the level of competition and the quality that we've seen on the pitch from Canada against better and better competition time and time again, that you have a much stronger and deeper team, of course. This team that they'll have in October seems a bit more balanced and a bit more like the team we'll expect to see next year. Only 4 forwards up front. Kyle Aaron is back, of course, didn't miss because of injury in September, but also has missed some action. Hasn't had a lot of minutes at Feyenoord. Promise David looks great. Jonathan David seems like someone who needs confidence right now. You got to feel like he'll be trusted to play 90 minutes both games if he wants that. Tony Oluwase looks great. It's getting more crowded, which is exciting. And I think in this window, maybe they'll have a few more questions answered, Alex.
Yeah, I think also it's a credit to where they are that I think we can start to rule the next Ismail Kone out. What I mean by that is Ismail Kone went from no one knows who this kid is to pro debut to in the World Cup squad to playing significant minutes at the World Cup in 10 months. I think we're starting to get to a point where that could still happen, but if that's happening, some kid is grabbing the 26 roster spot and we're seeing 7 minutes across the tournament. We're not seeing anyone go that we don't know of becoming getting good minutes next summer. And I think it's because you look across the roster now, it's okay. The 2 goalkeepers, you have locks. The center backs, you have 4 center backs who are locks. Fullbacks, you arguably got your fullbacks really figured out, health permitting. Midfielders, you've got, I don't know how many they're going to bring, if it's 5 or 6, but you got 4 or 5 of them locked out wide. And you've now probably got 3 locks up front as well. You've got 2 to 3 locks. It's really now bubble battles and fringe players. And then from there within this group, it's battling for roster spots, right? There's not going to be anyone we don't know coming in and be all right, you're stealing Ali Ahmed's winger spot, or you're stealing, Moïse Bombito and Derek Cornelius the center back spot. So I think it'll be cool to see those battles play out in terms of the bubble players. What can we see? Especially Jonathan Osorio, how much of a shot does he have? Because it sounds like it's kind of him versus Junior Hoylett right now. And I thought Junior Hoylett didn't, do a whole lot wrong in the last camp. You look up front, Daniel Jebuson's kind of dropped out. Is that the last we see of him? Is it going to be Oluwase, Laren, and David duking it out to play alongside Jonathan David? In the midfield, it's Kone, Saliba, all these guys are locks, Choinière, Sigurd, but who starts alongside Eustachio? So it's become a battle of those sorts of set positions. It's less now what's the 26? What's the 26 look like? And I think that's good for Jesse Marsch, because that little bit more clarity helps in terms of building this roster.
And I think when you look at this roster, one of the biggest questions that I have when it comes to this team is who's going to play on left midfield? Because, of course, Alphonso Davies could play there, considering the depth that Canada has gotten at left back and at right back as well, with how well Richie Laryea has been playing, Alistair Johnston coming back into the picture. Ali Ahmed's been playing well and has looked better on that left side. We've seen guys like Jacob Schaffelberg look good on that left side. And then, of course, Liam Miller comes back into the team this window. And one of the things I liked with him at the Copa America in particular was how he played with Alphonso Davies. I remember in that first game against Argentina, there were consistent overlaps between those two. And that was one of the strengths I saw with Liam Miller. So I'm wondering whether Liam Miller might have some challenges coming back into the team, knowing that his strength was playing with Davies, not having Davies there, having to adjust. Of course, we don't know really what his fitness is. He got a few minutes for Hull in his return. He's not going to be probably starting for this Canadian team. But who do you see as the favorite to start on the left side? Because it seems like there's a ton of options right now, Brennan.
As we saw the rotation at Copa America, Liam Miller played very, very well. But I think there's a lot of people that feel Liam Miller's not strong enough on both sides of the ball and against certain opposition, which we had seen at Copa America, that make him maybe a little vulnerable. At the same time, how do you justify not having Richie Laryea in this team and on the pitch? And I think that's what September was particularly. And you look on the other side at right back, and Alistair Johnston would come back to play, you think, but how do you not have Nico Seeger playing significant minutes in the team? So it's part of the evolution, right? Where now they have a real headache of rotation and balance, and how do you get your best players on the pitch, and where do you put them? And I do think as we get closer to, maybe that picture will become clearer, that Alphonso Davies can't be the left back, that you have him there at the left wing. But if that's at the expense of Miller and not being able to do what we saw at Copa, or Tejan, who have done that as well, or Schaff, then I don't know if maybe you're getting the best out of Alphonso Davies in that situation either. That's not a question yet that I have an answer to. And without Alphonso Davies available in October and perhaps not available in November, as Marsch mentioned, then maybe we won't get that answer anytime soon either.
Yeah, well, look, respectfully, I mean, Liam Miller hasn't been on the field in 11 months, and that's, he's going to have to work back to full fitness. I think he knows that. Jesse Marsch knows that. Alphonso Davies hasn't been on the pitch about 7 months now. When he comes back, you don't know what these guys are going to look like. All that to say, I think what Ali Ahmed has done is like he's done enough, I think. Because the thing is, it's easy to forget with national teams because you don't play every 2 months. You forget the last window very quickly. Like Ali Ahmed's been the guy for about 4 or 5 windows now, because I started Copa America. He got his first shot at the end of the tournament, looked good. Jesse Marsch, like, okay, I'll throw you in September. He looked good again, fantastic against the U.S. 12 months ago, if we remember how good he was that game. Then in October, he had another great game against Panama. In November, he was good again. Then he goes into this year. Like Ali Ahmed for a while now has kind of really put a strong case for that left mid spot in terms of what he's brought offensively. I think it's now a goal and 4 assists for Canada in the last while, but also defensively. I think it would be unfair immediately for him to have a guy like Liam Miller drop in and immediately supplant him. And not to say that it can't happen, but I think it would be unfair. And I just think of Jesse Marsch's comments from last window where he's like, yeah, now there's going to be less rotation for rotation. It's now where you play from the front, right? Like it's the World Cup battles, it's form, it's what are you doing for performances? So the way I see it is it's Ali Ahmed's spot now. If he drops off over the next few months, and then, okay, we can have a discussion of who takes. Is it Schaffelberg? Is it Miller? Is it Jaden Nelson? You can't forget. But right now, Ahmed on the left and Buchanan on the right have been so good for Canada that's kind of your starting wingers until proven otherwise. So for Miller, I think that's a good thing, because I think it's for a player of his caliber right now, just getting into the World Cup squad and being as fit as possible is a good thing. And I don't think it's bad if you have 30 minutes of Liam Miller off the bench next summer, because I think if that's the case, he's good enough to start. Like I agree, I agree that he should be in the discussion, but I think at the end of the day, having that luxury of having guys like him come off the bench is huge. Then as for Alphonso Davies, let's just see what he looks like. I think the reality is I continue to say I think that left back position just suits him more. Jesse Marsch's priority should be, how can I maximize him at left back? Like, how can I turn him into a goal scoring machine, an assisting machine from left back, and less do I need to move him up the pitch? Because I think there's a lot of potential for this best version of the team to have Davies at left back, still contributing assists, still getting involved in the goals. And yes, it's tough for Richie Larea if he drops out. But again, to the Liam Miller point, if Richie Larea is coming off the bench for you in World Cup games, that's a bonus. I think of the last World Cup where John Herdman, after he had his starting 11, who were some of the guys he was bringing off the bench, right? Like, there wasn't necessarily the difference makers he craves. I think Jesse Marsch is in a great position where if in his opening World Cup game next summer, Richie Larea is not in the starting 11. Nico Seeger is not in the starting 11. Maybe even Alistair Johnson is not in the starting 11. That's not necessarily the worst thing in the world, because that means that the guys in front of them have performed so well and continue to perform so well that you now have the luxury of actually having difference makers off the bench.
And we're also seeing another goalkeeper come into this squad. James Pantemis comes into this team, and Portland lose both their goalkeepers, Maxime Crépeau and James Pantemis. But it's 3 third keepers called up in 3 windows now. Who is the favorite to take the third job with the Canadian team? Of course, they're probably not going to see minutes. It is a battle between the two, but it does seem like that spot is very much up for grabs, and maybe the most open opportunity to get a spot on the World Cup team, Brennan.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure. I mean, James Pantemis got the third seat on the plane to Qatar because Max Crépeau broke his leg, and now they're teammates. And he's taken Max Crépeau's number 1 job in Portland. Yet he doesn't have a chance at being the number 1 goalkeeper for Canada. It's an interesting scenario, right? I think that what Marsch has found, and it seems like what this goalkeeping core has found, is rotating that third piece has contributed something to the battle between Sinclair and Crépeau. And it does seem to me from exchanges I've had with both of those goalkeepers and just the way that they speak, that it doesn't feel like a battle. That they know they're competing. But I think, before in the last World Cup, where it seemed like it was definitely Milan Borjan starting every game that Canada was able to play. That was a different dynamic for Crépeau. I do think that there's a scenario where both of those guys actually start at the World Cup and potentially start in the group stage. And I think that Jesse Marsch has created a great culture for that. In addition to using that third spot with particularly younger goalkeepers, right? Goalkeepers younger than Dane Sinclair every time. I think maybe Pantemis might be 2 years older, but I guess I consider Pantemis being a younger goalkeeper.
I think he's a year younger, but don't quote me on that.
Is a year younger? Either way. James Pantemis being in there now, look, he's earned it, right? You watch a lot of late night Timbers games, Ben. He's been fantastic in MLS. Very, very deserving of that role. Much the same way that Dane Sinclair was deserving of being the third guy when it was Milan and Max. So I think that's kind of the evolution, and maybe Pantemis being afforded the opportunity in this window, as Jesse Marsch said, because Portland wasn't playing and they didn't want to decimate Phil Neville's goalkeeping core by taking both of those guys. Maybe Pantemis is actually the front runner, and he wants to see this, because I think that Jaden Hibbert is a guy for the future and someone you'd want to cap, and they'll have opportunity to do that perhaps after the World Cup as well. I don't feel like there's any rush there. And Jonathan Sirois, who knows what Europe or what next season will bring for him. At the moment, I do feel like James Pantemis is the strongest guy and someone I'd want in that third seat, Alex.
Yeah, although I don't know how much of him you'll see, right? Because in March, for example, or like what happens if Portland, again, I think there's a lot of ifs, because surely I cannot see a world next season where Pantemis and Crépeau are still at the same club. Like, correct. Surely one of them has to go for their own sake. And I'd assume Crépeau unless Neville gets fired, which is very possible because Portland's such a weird team. But if there is a world where they're both at the same camp, Jesse Marsch just said it. There's a reason he's waited till now to call in Pantemis. Like, he's wanted to call him in, but he can't, because you can't be like, hey, Portland, we're taking both of your goalies. Like, get stuff. See you later. We're gonna both of them. One of them is gonna ride pine for me for a month at the Gold Cup while you guys get screwed. But no, I think Pantemis definitely earns a shout. For me, though, I know it's a bit of a bold one. I think it's Jaden Hibbert has a bit of a front runner, because I think from how I've always judged the third goalkeeper position, either it's like uncle vibes or it's like youth for the future. Like I think of France when they won the World Cup. They had like Steve Mandanda just vibing there. Like you see all the videos from them. He was like the uncle. He was always just vibing and training on the bus, having a laugh. They played him in the last group stage game because they'd already qualified. But other than that, he knew he wasn't going to see the field because it was Hugo Lloris. And if not, like Alphonse Areola would have, probably like maybe been the backup. But that helped. France was a relatively young team at the time, and it helped having a sage veteran like that. This Canadian team's a bit different because their goalkeepers are both a bit more experienced. Like Crepeau's been around for a while now. St. Clair's been around for a while. Canada's also got other veterans in the team, like we mentioned, Osorio, potentially Hoylett, etc., where there's not as much of a need to bring in this sage old head as the third goalkeeper. If not, I think Milan Borjan could have still been earning calls if that had been the case. So I think there's going to be a bit of an edge given to someone who could really benefit from this World Cup experience. And as a third goalkeeper, James Pantemis has already been to a World Cup, right, Brendan? Like you mentioned, he's been around that group. You think of what it could mean to have Jaden Hibbert there as a guy that young. Like we also have to remember, like he's starting now regularly for an MLS team, and he's like what 20, 21. That's very rare for goalkeepers. Crepeau, St. Clair, how many of those guys had to wait till their mid-20s to get a shot? Thomas Assault, like the list goes on and on of guys who had to wait for a shot. I think Hibbert is one to watch. Plus the Jamaica stuff, keep an eye on it. Like Andre Blake is almost 40 now. Like there's going to be a point where he hangs up the gloves and Jamaica is going to be all over Jaden Hibbert. So any chance you can get to get the inside track on it, yeah, you might not reap the benefits for 2, 3, 4 years. But I think having him in the fold could really pay off down the road as you try to build this team going forward.
That phone call from Steve McLaren. Hey, Jaden, it's Steve McLaren. Can we go for wings? I'd love to talk. Wings in Atlanta. Famous.
I thought that was a reference to the jerk chicken down in Jamaica. He's like, yeah, man.
No, definitely a reference to the strip clubs in Atlanta that people would go for. Yeah.
Do they have jerk chicken wings there?
I don't know. Lou Williams didn't get the chance to answer that. He just introduced it to the world.